The warning lights turned red all at once. Grabbed the control stick and pulled hard, but the shuttle did not listen. Smoke filled the small cabin. The engine made a terrible sound like metal screaming, and then everything went silent. She had 3 seconds to make a choice. Hit the eject button. The seat threw her into the sky. Cold air hit her face like 1,000 needles. Below her, the shuttle fell toward the frozen ground of 7. It hit the ice and exploded into orange fire. Pieces of metal flew in every direction. Watched it burn as her parachute opened above her. She landed hard. Her body rolled across the blue ice. When she finally stopped, she lay there for a long moment staring at the sky. Her chest hurt. Her head was spinning, but she was alive. Stood up slowly. Her legs were shaking. She looked around and saw nothing but ice in every direction. The moon of 7 was a frozen wasteland. No trees, no buildings, no people, just endless white and blue ice under a sky that never got fully bright. The wind was already cutting through her suit. She checked the temperature on her wrist screen. -42 degrees, and falling. She tried her emergency beacon. The light blinked once, then went dark. Broken. She tried her communication device, nothing but static. The crash had damaged everything. Knew the numbers. Without heat, she had maybe 6 hours, maybe less. Her thermal jacket would help, but it was not enough for a night on this moon. She needed shelter. She started walking toward a ridge of ice in the distance. The wind pushed against her with every step. Snow began to fall, small and sharp like tiny pieces of glass. Her fingers were already getting numb inside her gloves. It took her 2 hours to reach the ridge. By then, her face was burning from the cold. Her breath came out in white clouds that froze instantly. But when she climbed over the ridge, she saw something that gave her hope. A cave. The opening was dark and wide, carved into the side of a glacier. Moved toward it quickly. The moment she stepped inside, the wind stopped. The silence was sudden and strange. She walked deeper into the cave, using the small light on her wrist to see. The walls were smooth blue ice. The floor was covered in old snow. The cave went deep into the glacier, twisting and turning like a frozen river. Followed it, looking for the safest place to rest. Then she heard something. She stopped, her heart beat faster. The sound was soft, almost too quiet to hear. A chirping noise, high and scared, like a baby bird. Moved forward slowly. The sound got louder. She turned a corner and found a small chamber in the ice, and there in the corner she saw them. 3 small creatures huddled together. They were about the size of small dogs. Their fur was silver-white, thick and soft, but covered in frost. They had large ears that lay flat against their heads. Their eyes were huge and golden, reflecting the light from her wrist. Recognized them immediately. Cubs. She had studied them during her training. They were a nomadic species that traveled in large family packs. They lived on cold moons and planets across this sector of space. The adults were tall and strong, with sharp claws and quick minds, but the cubs were different. Cubs were helpless. They could not control their body temperature until they were almost adults. Without the warmth of their pack, they would freeze to death in hours. The adults always protected them, keeping them close, sharing body heat through the coldest nights. But these cubs were alone. Looked around the chamber. There were no adults, no signs of a pack, just 3 small cubs shaking in the cold, their golden eyes wide with fear. Something terrible had happened here. She took a step closer. The largest cub immediately pushed in front of the others. He bared his small teeth and made a hissing sound. It was not scary. It was sad. A baby trying to protect his family. Stopped, she lowered herself to the ground and sat down. She did not move toward them. She just sat there, breathing slowly, keeping her body calm. The cubs watched her with suspicious eyes. Began to talk. Her voice was soft and gentle. She told them her name. She told them she was not going to hurt them. She knew they could not understand her words. Cubs did not learn language until they were older, but she hoped they could understand her voice, her tone, her intention. Minutes passed, then an hour. The cubs stopped hissing. The largest one sat down but kept watching her. The middle one leaned against his brother, exhausted. The smallest one, a female barely larger than a house cat, was shaking so hard they could hear her teeth chattering. The temperature was still dropping. Checked her wrist screen again. Negative 51 degrees outside. The cave was warmer but not warm enough. Not for cubs who could not make their own heat. She watched the smallest cub shake. The fur on her small body was wet from melted frost. Her breathing was fast and shallow. Her golden eyes were starting to close. She was dying. Felt something twist in her chest. She did not think about her own survival. She did not calculate the numbers. She just knew that she could not sit here and watch these bobbies freeze. She looked at her thermal jacket. It was the only thing keeping her alive in this cold. Without it, she would not survive the night. Her body would shut down piece by piece. First her fingers and toes, then her arms and legs, then her heart. But the cubs would die first. They would die before she would, and they were just children. Stood up slowly. The cubs tensed, ready to run, but she did not move toward them quickly. She unzipped her jacket with shaking hands. The cold hit her body immediately, cutting through her thin inner suit like a knife. She walked forward one step at a time. The largest cub growled low in his throat, but did not stop. She knelt down a few feet away from them and held out the jacket. The cubs stared at it. They could feel the warmth coming from the fabric. The smallest one lifted her head, her nose twitching. Gently placed the jacket over all three of them. The effect was immediate. The smallest cub burrowed into the warm fabric, disappearing completely. The middle one pressed against her. The largest one hesitated, then slowly lowered himself down, letting the jacket cover his shaking body. Backed away. She pressed her back against the ice wall of the cave. The cold was already seeping into her bones. Her whole body began to shake. She wrapped her arms around her knees and watched the cubs settle under her jacket. Their shaking slowed. Their breathing became deeper. They were getting warm. Was getting colder. But she smiled anyway, a small, tired smile, because they were alive. These three scared little the cold was a living thing. It crawled up its legs and wrapped around her chest. It pressed against her skin and tried to reach her heart. She had never felt anything like it. Her teeth chattered so hard that her jaw hurt. Her hands had turned white, then blue. She could not feel her toes anymore. Every breath burned her lungs like fire, but it was the only warmth she had left. She kept her eyes on the cubs. Under her jacket they had stopped shaking. The smallest one was completely hidden in the fabric. Only her tiny ears poked out. The middle cub had curled into a tight ball. The largest one lay across them both, his body protecting theirs. They were sleeping. Tried to remember the training manuals. How long could a human survive in extreme cold without protection? 4 hours. 5. She had already been sitting here for 2. The night on 7 lasted 18 standard hours. She was not going to make it. But she did not move. She did not take the jacket back. She just sat there, shaking against the ice wall, watching 3 small creatures breathe slowly in their sleep. She thought about her mother. Back on Earth in a small apartment inn, her mother was probably making dinner right now. Rice and soup and kimchi, simple food, warm food, could almost smell it. She thought about her best friend on the ship, always worried too much. She would say things like, "Be careful out there and come back safe before every mission." Always laughed and said she would be fine. She wondered if knew yet that her shuttle had crashed, that she was missing. The hours passed slowly. Shaking got worse. Then it got better. Then it stopped completely. She knew that was a bad sign. When your body stopped shaking, it meant your body was giving up. It did not have the energy to fight anymore. She was so tired. Her eyes kept closing. She wanted to sleep. Sleep would be warm, sleep would make the pain go away. But every time her eyes closed, she forced them open again. Because if she slept, she might not wake up. And if she did not wake up, who would protect the cubs? Sometime in the middle of the night, the largest cub woke up. He lifted his head and looked around the dark cave. His golden eyes found sitting against the wall. For a long moment, he just watched her, tried to smile, but her face was too frozen to move properly. The cub stood up slowly. He was careful not to wake his siblings. He walked toward with quiet steps, his silver fur glowing faintly in the darkness. Did not move. She could not move even if she wanted to. Her body felt like it was made of stone. The cub stopped in front of her. He tilted his head, studying her with those big golden eyes. Then he did something that made want to cry. He pressed his warm body against her side. The heat from his fur was like a miracle. It spread through his frozen skin and reached somewhere deep inside her. She let out a small sound, something between a laugh and a sob. The cub looked up at her. Then he made a soft chirping noise. It was not scared this time. It was gentle, almost like he was saying thank you. A few minutes later, the middle cub woke up. He looked at his brother pressed against the strange creature. He seemed confused at first. Then he walked over and pressed himself against the other side. More warmth, more life. The smallest cub was the last to wake. She poked her head out from under the jacket and made a sad little noise when she realized her brothers were gone. Then she saw them next to. She stumbled over on tiny legs and climbed right into his lap. Looked down at the small creature curled against her stomach. Tears were running down her face, freezing into tiny crystals on her cheeks. 3 small bodies were pressed against her, sharing their heat, keeping her alive. She had given them her warmth. Now they were giving it back. Started to talk again. Her voice was weak and rough, but she talked anyway. She told them about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests, about cities full of lights and people, about how humans used to look up at the stars and wonder if they were alone. The cubs did not understand her words, but they listened. Their ears turned toward her voice. Their golden eyes watched her face. They were paying attention. She told them about her childhood, about playing in the rain with her brother, about her grandmother who made the best rice cakes in the whole city, about the first time she saw a spaceship and knew she wanted to fly among the stars. She told them about being lonely, about how space was beautiful but also very empty, about how she missed her family every single day, about how sometimes in the quiet moments between missions, she wondered if she had made the right choice. The cubs pressed closer to her, told them about hope, about how humans had survived ice ages and wars and disasters, about how they kept going even when everything seemed impossible, about how they always found a way. She was going to find a way too. When the first light of morning came through the cave entrance was still alive. Her body was weak, her mind was foggy, but she was alive. The cubs were still pressed against her, still keeping her warm. The smallest one was making small sounds in her sleep, like she was dreaming. The largest one had his head on shoulder, his eyes half closed. Looked at them and felt something new in her chest, something warm that had nothing to do with temperature. She had spent her whole career studying alien species from a distance, reading reports, looking at samples, taking notes. She had never really connected with any of them. They were always subjects, not friends. But these 3 small creatures had changed something inside her. They had trusted her. They had kept her alive. They had given her a reason to keep fighting. Made a decision. She was not going to wait here and hope for rescue. Hope was not a plan. She needed to move. She needed to find her crashed shuttle. The beacon might be broken, but maybe she could fix it. Maybe she could send a signal. She had to try, not just for herself but for them. She looked down at the smallest cub sleeping in her lap, so small, so helpless, so completely dependent on others to survive. Made a silent promise. She was going to get these cubs somewhere safe. She was going to find help. She was going to protect them no matter what. Even if it killed her, getting up was the hardest thing had ever done. Her body did not want to move. Every muscle screamed in pain. Her joints felt like they were filled with broken glass, but she forced herself to stand anyway. The cubs watched her with worried eyes. The smallest one made a sad chirping noise when moved away from them. She reached down and touched the little one's head gently. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm not leaving you." She put her thermal jacket back on. It was cold now, but her body heat would warm it up again. She needed it for the journey ahead, but she also needed to keep the cubs warm. Looked through her emergency supplies. She had a small pack that survived the ejection. Inside was a medical kit, some food bars, water tablets, a knife, and thin emergency blankets. The blankets were made of special material that reflected body heat. She wrapped one blanket around all 3 cubs. They looked like a silver burrito with 6 golden eyes peeking out. In any other situation would have laughed. The smallest cub could not walk well. Her legs were too short, and she was still weak from the cold night. Thought for a moment. Then she took another emergency blanket and made a simple sling. She tied it around her chest and placed the smallest cub inside. The little one looked up with huge eyes. Then she made a soft sound and pressed her face against chest, right over her heart. Something in soul cracked open. She thought about names. They probably had their own names for these cubs, names given by parents who were now gone, but did not know those names, and she needed something to call them. She looked at the largest cub. He was brave and protective. He had stood in front of his siblings even when he was terrified. In Korean, the word for spring was a season of new beginnings, of hope after a long winter. She said, pointing at him, "Your name is." The cub tilted his head at the sound. His ears moved forward slightly. The middle cub was calm and steady. He followed his brother without fear. He was like a stone in a river, solid and unmoving. The word for stone was, "You are," said. The middle cub blinked at her slowly. That was close enough to agreement. She looked down at the smallest one in her sling. This little female was tiny and delicate, but she had survived a freezing night. She was stronger than she looked. The word for flower was. It was also a name that Korean parents gave to daughters they loved very much. "And you are," whispered. Made a small purring sound against her chest. They left the cave as the morning light spread across the ice. The wind was gentler than the night before, but it was still cold. Very cold. Could see her breath forming clouds in front of her face. She looked at the horizon. Somewhere out there was her crashed shuttle. She remembered the direction she had come from. If she walked back toward the ridge, she might be able to see the wreckage, or at least the smoke from the fire. And walked beside her, their small legs moving quickly to keep up. They stayed close, never going more than a few feet away. The silver blanket wrapped around them made them look like small ghosts floating across the ice. Talked while she walked. It helped her focus. It helped her ignore the pain in her body. She told the cubs about her ship. The research vessel was called Horizon's Edge. It had 60 crew members and enough supplies for 2 years of exploration. Her commander was a man named. He was serious and strict, but he was also fair. He cared about his crew. She told them about her friend, was the ship's medical officer. She had warm hands and a gentle voice. Whenever got hurt on a mission, would fix her up and scold her at the same time. "You need to be more careful," always said, but she never stopped smiling. Wondered if they were looking for her. The shuttle was supposed to return 6 hours ago. By now, Commander must know something was wrong. He would send search parties. He would not give up easily. But 7 was a big moon. The search area was thousands of square kilometers. They might not find her in time. She had to help them. The walk was hard. The ice was slippery and fell several times. Each fall sent pain shooting through her tired body. but she always got up again and waited for her patiently, their golden eyes watching her with something that looked like concern. By midday was exhausted. Her legs felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. Her head was pounding. She had not eaten since before the crash, and her stomach was growling loudly. She stopped and sat down on a flat piece of ice. The cubs gathered around her immediately, poked her head out of the sling and made a questioning noise. Pulled out her food bars. She had 5 of them. Each one was enough calories for one meal. She did the math in her head. 5 bars, 4 mouths, at least 2 days of walking. It was not enough. She broke one bar into pieces. She gave the biggest pieces to the cubs. They sniffed the food carefully before eating it, ate his piece quickly, chewed slowly like he was thinking about the taste, needed help so held small bits up to her tiny mouth. When the cubs were finished, ate what was left. It was not much, a few bites, but it was something. She melted some ice for water using her body heat and the emergency blankets. She let the cubs drink first, kept trying to lick the water off's fingers, and it tickled. After the meal they kept walking. The ice ridge was getting closer, could see it clearly now, just a few more hours. Suddenly stopped. His ears went flat against his head. He made a low growling sound that had not heard before. She looked at him, confused. Then she followed his gaze. In the distance, moving across the ice, were dark shapes, 3 of them, big, much bigger than the cubs, much bigger than predators. They had not noticed in the cubs yet, but they were heading in their direction, and on this open ice there was nowhere to hide. Felt her heart start to beat faster. She looked at the cubs, then at the distant shapes, then at the ridge that was still too far away. They were in trouble. She picked up and added him to the sling with. It was heavy, but she could manage. She looked at. "Can you run?" she asked. Looked up at her. He could not understand her words, but he understood the fear in her voice. He understood danger. He started running. Ran after him, carrying his siblings against her chest, praying they would reach the ridge before the predators saw them. They did not make it to the ridge in time. The predators saw them, 3 massive creatures with 6 legs each, covered in white fur that made them nearly invisible against the ice. Their eyes were small and black. Their mouths were full of long teeth. They moved fast, much faster than could run. She stopped behind a small hill of ice. There was no point in running anymore. The predators would catch them in minutes. She had to make a stand. Put the sling down gently, and looked up at her with scared eyes, pressed against her leg, his small body shaking. "Stay here," she told them. Her voice was calm even though her heart was pounding. "Stay quiet, I will protect you." She picked up the biggest rock she could find. It was heavy and cold in her hands. She stood in front of the cubs and waited. The first predator came around the ice hill. It was even bigger up close. Its head was the size of its whole body. Its breath came out in clouds of steam. It looked at her with those small black eyes and could see the hunger in them. It did not expect her to stand her ground. On this moon, everything ran from these creatures. Everything hid. Nothing fought back. The predator was confused. It stopped moving and tilted its massive head. Screamed. She screamed as loud as she could. She waved her arms. She threw the rock right at the creature's face. The rock hit its nose with a solid crack. The predator jumped back in surprise. It made a sound that was half growl, half whimper. It had never been hit before. It did not like it. The other 2 predators arrived. They circled around in the cubs looking for an opening, but kept turning, kept moving, kept facing them. She picked up more rocks. She threw them one after another. She screamed until her throat was raw. "You will not touch them," she shouted. "Do you hear me? You will not touch them." The predators did not understand her words, but they understood her actions. This small creature was not prey. This small creature was dangerous. This small creature was crazy. One predator got too close, grabbed her knife from her belt. When the creature lunged forward, she slashed at its face. The blade cut a line across its nose. Blood dripped onto the white ice. The predator howled in pain and pulled back. The other two looked at their wounded companion. They looked at each other. They were not sure anymore. Stood there breathing hard, knife in one hand and rock in the other. Blood was running down her arm where the creature's claw had scratched her during its attack, but she did not move. She did not run. She just stared at the predators with fire in her eyes. Minutes passed. The predators circled and growled, but they did not attack again. Finally, the wounded one turned away. The others followed. They disappeared into the white landscape looking for easier prey. Watched them go. When they were finally out of sight, her legs gave out. She fell to her knees on the cold ice. Her whole body was shaking. Small bodies pressed against her, was licking her wounded arm, was pushing his head under her hand, was making soft sounds from the sling, trying to climb up to reach her face. Laughed. It was a weak, tired laugh, but it was real. "I told you," she whispered to them, "I will protect you." They rested for an hour, cleaned her wound and wrapped it with supplies from her medical kit. The cut was not deep, but it would leave a scar, a memory of this day. When she felt strong enough, they started walking again. The ridge was close now. Climbed it slowly, her tired legs burning with each step, and followed her, their small paws slipping on the ice. Was quiet in the sling, her eyes half closed. When reached the top of the ridge, she saw it, the wreckage of her shuttle. It was about 2 kilometers away, scattered across the ice like broken toys. The main body was mostly intact, though it was burned and crushed. Some pieces were still smoking. The emergency beacon antenna was bent but still attached. Hope filled his chest. She started walking toward it. The cubs followed. 2 kilometers was not far. She could make it. She had to make it. But her body had other plans. The cold, the hunger, the fight with the predators, and the sleepless night had taken everything from her. Each step was harder than the last. Her vision was getting dark around the edges. Her thoughts were becoming slow and confused. She fell. The ice was cold against her face. She tried to get up, but her arms would not work. She tried to call out, but her voice was just a whisper. The cubs gathered around her, making worried sounds. Grabbed her sleeve with his teeth and pulled, pushed against her back with his head, but was too heavy. They could not move her. Crawled out of the sling. She climbed up to his face and licked her cheek. Her small tongue was warm and rough. "I'm sorry," whispered. "I'm so sorry, I can't." Her eyes were closing. The darkness was coming. She could feel her body giving up. But then she saw the shuttle wreckage again. So close, so close. And she thought about the cubs. 3 small lives depending on her. 3 small hearts beating because she had given them her jacket, because she had refused to let them die. She could not give up, not now, not when they were so close. Pushed herself up onto her hands and knees. Every muscle in her body was screaming, but she kept moving. 1 hand forward, 1 knee forward, again, again. The cubs walked beside her, chirping encouragement. Stayed right next to her face, his golden eyes never leaving hers, like he was willing her to keep going. The sun started to set. The temperature began to drop, was crawling now, dragging herself across the ice inch by inch. The shuttle was getting closer. 100 meters, 50 meters, 20. She collapsed in front of the wreckage. Her hand touched the cold metal of her ruined shuttle. She could not go any further. Climbed up her body and curled up on her chest, sharing her small warmth. Lay down next to her head, pressing his body against her cheek, covered her other side. 3 small cubs surrounded her, trying to keep her alive like she had kept them alive. Smiled weakly. She looked up at the darkening sky. Somewhere up there was her ship, her friends, her family. "Please," she whispered to the stars, "please find us." Then her eyes closed, and everything went dark. But before she fell unconscious, she reached out and touched the emergency beacon with her frozen fingers. She tapped against the metal. 3 short taps, 3 long taps, 3 short taps. The oldest human signal for help. She tapped it again and again, teaching the rhythm to the cubs who watched her hand with curious eyes. Then she stopped moving. The night came, and somewhere in the darkness began to tap his paw against his helmet. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. Commander had not slept in 4 days. He stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, staring at the map of 7 on the main screen. The search grid was divided into sections. Each section had been scanned twice. Nothing. No signal, no wreckage, no sign of. His crew was starting to lose hope. They did not say it out loud, but he could see it in their eyes. 4 days on a frozen moon with no supplies. The numbers were not good. The numbers said she was already dead, but refused to accept the numbers. Was one of his best officers. She was smart, strong, and stubborn. If anyone could survive on that frozen rock, it was her. He would not stop searching. He could not. The door to the bridge opened. Walked in, her face pale and tired. She had been crying again, could tell by her red eyes. "Commander," she said quietly, "the crew is exhausted. We have covered every section of the search grid multiple times. Maybe we should." No, his voice was firm. "We keep looking." Opened her mouth to argue. Then she closed it. She walked over to the sensor station and sat down. If the commander was not giving up, neither was she. Hours passed. The sun set on 7. The moon became a dark ball of ice and shadows. The sensors showed nothing but empty frozen land. Then sat up straight. "Commander," her voice was strange, "I'm picking up something." Was at her side in seconds. "What is it? A signal?" "No," frowned at her screen. "It's a sound, coming from one of the cave systems on the surface. It's being amplified by the ice formations." "What kind of sound?" Played it through the speakers. It was a high-pitched howling noise. Alien, probably an animal. The crew looked disappointed, but then held up her hand. "Wait, listen." Under the howling there was another sound, soft and rhythmic, like something tapping against metal. Tap, 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 tap. Felt his heart stop. "That's Morse code," he whispered. "That's SOS." The bridge erupted into activity. People shouted orders. Screens lit up with new data. A rescue shuttle was launched within minutes, flying toward the source of the signal at maximum speed. Was on the shuttle. She refused to stay behind. They followed the sound across the frozen landscape. The howling got louder. The tapping got clearer. Then they saw something on the ground near a pile of wreckage. A body surrounded by 3 small creatures. The shuttle landed hard, was out the door before it fully stopped. She ran across the ice, her medical bag in her hand. Was lying face down on the ice. Her skin was blue, her lips were white. She was not moving, but she was breathing, barely. The 3 cubs saw coming. Instead of running away, they positioned themselves in front of his body. The largest one growled and bared his teeth. His small body was shaking, but he stood his ground. He was protecting her. Stopped, she looked at the cubs with wide eyes. Then she slowly lowered herself to the ground. She held out her empty hands. "It's okay," she said softly. "I'm a friend, I'm here to help her." The cubs did not move. Their golden eyes watched her with suspicion. The largest one kept growling. Took a deep breath. She remembered what always said about alien species. They don't understand our words, but they understand our intentions. She moved forward very slowly, 1 step at a time. She talked in a gentle voice, telling the cubs that she was a doctor, that she could help their friend, that everything was going to be okay. It took 20 minutes. Finally, the largest cub stopped growling. He looked at its pale face, then he stepped aside. The medical team rushed in. They loaded onto a stretcher and carried her to the shuttle. The cubs tried to follow, but they were too slow. The smallest one cried out in distress. Picked her up. The cub fit perfectly in her arms. She looked down at the tiny creature and felt tears running down her cheeks. "Come on," she said, "you're coming with us." She picked up all 3 cubs and carried them onto the shuttle. They did not resist. They seemed to understand that was taking them to their human. Woke up 3 days later in the medical bay. The first thing she saw was white ceiling lights. The second thing she saw was Face, looking down at her with tears in her eyes. "Welcome back," whispered. Tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. Gave her some water. After a few sips, managed to ask one question. "The cubs?" Smiled, she stepped aside. 3 small creatures were sleeping in a pile on a bed next to us, and, safe and warm. Started to cry. 2 weeks later, a ship arrived at the human station. The matriarchs had come for their children. 3 cubs were the only survivors of a pack that had been killed in a territorial war. They had been searching for them across the entire sector. They expected to find the cubs traumatized, feral, maybe dead. Instead, they found 3 healthy cubs who refused to leave a human woman's side. The eldest matriarch was tall and silver, with eyes like liquid gold. She entered the medical bay with guards at her side. When she approached the bed, the cubs immediately moved in front of it, growling and hissing. They were protecting their human. The matriarch stopped. She looked at the cubs, then she looked at her guards. "Leave us," she said. When they were alone, the matriarch sat down beside the bed. She studied for a long moment. "You are the human who saved them," she said through a translator device. Nodded. "I found them in a cave. They were freezing. I couldn't let them die." "You gave them your heat jacket." "Yes." "You nearly died." "Yes." The matriarch was silent, could not read her alien face. She did not know if it was angry or grateful or something else entirely. Finally, the matriarch spoke again. "We have traveled among the stars for 10,000 years. We have met many species, conquerors who took what they wanted, traders who gave only to receive, scholars who watched but never helped." She leaned forward, her golden eyes meeting. "But never before have we met a species that would freeze for children not their own. Never before have we met a species that would fight predators for bobbies they found in a cave. Never before have we met a species like humans." She stood up. She placed one hand over her heart and bowed deeply. "Do not forget. We will remember this. We will remember you. And we will remember humans as the species who taught us that kindness lives even in the coldest places." Did not know what to say, so she just smiled through her tears. Climbed onto her bed and pressed his head against her hand, and followed. The matriarch watched them with something that might have been wonder. "They have chosen you," she said softly. "In the old ways, that means you are their family now, if you will accept them." Looked down at the 3 cubs curled up against her body. 3 small lives that had changed everything. 3 small hearts that had kept her alive in the darkest night. "Yes," she whispered, "yes, I accept." And somewhere in the vast coldness of space, a new family was born. Not from blood, not from species, but from something much stronger. From love. Over and over again. The race had begun. The morning light grew stronger. The wind outside had died down. It was time to move. Began to wake the cubs gently. A new day was starting, and she had a very long way to go. Bobbies were alive, and that was enough. The night was going to be very long.